Okay. That,
I was running the AI.
that work for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's pretty good. You can see it all the way over here, so. I think the folks online should be able to pick it up. So again, for the record, J.R. Russo and Associates here representing the applicants, Rich Case and Tony DiAgostino and Tom Tyler, who I got up and turned around and see him sitting back here. He's one of the property owners, he and his wife, Marilyn. So this is an application for a subdivision, 10 lots in total, 2 of those lots being rear lots. So it's a subdivision application and actually a special permit application. Rear lots require special permits for an approval. So we're located here essentially at the northeast corner of East Road and Reservoir. Reservoir being at the bottom of the sheet down here, and East Road over here along the left side of the sheet. So if we were to come down the end of Reservoir as we know it, right here around the corner of the town hall, and come to the stop sign at what we normally would think is the end of the road. And we took a left and headed north on this property, immediate on your right. If we went straight, which is also Reservoir, which has not been improved until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. When Public Works went in and stripped out topsoil and so forth and put down some bases. The other things are town line. I don't think they went that far. So what we're proposing here is 10 lots, 3 lots on east, one's on the corner of East and Reservoir. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frontage lots on Reservoir, and then the 2 rear lots will also access served by site septic systems and individual wells. Soil testing was done with the health department. Actually, that's sitting here. I don't know if everybody knows who Wes is, and I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Wes. Wes is with the health department. He was actually out here when we did the soil testing. Soil testing was done about 1.5 years ago. It's a while back in the summertime. And we did multiple test pits on each lot. We installed some standpipes to look at groundwater on some of the lots. And we also did percolation tests on each one of the lots. That information was submitted to the health department. Wes reviewed it. They had some initial comments. I think my partner, Tim Kuhn, addressed those comments. And you should have a letter in your packets with regard to the suitability of the soil for site septic systems. There's also individual water wells to serve one of these lots, and I expect we're going to be talking a little bit about that later on. So I'm going to save that to the end. Some other items in here and Ruth's memo that we could probably go through that are fairly simple. Talk about those first. The plans were reviewed by your town engineer, Len Norton. He initially had a couple of comments. One of them was with regard to sightline on the couple of the driveways that are over here on East Road. For those of you who are familiar, there's a little turn in the road right there, and there's also a little bit of a hill. There's some brush within the right of way and some vegetation that needs to be cleared. So we provided them with some sightline plans to show that there is adequate sightline for those driveways, and I think he's reviewed that and approved that. He also suggested some easements along property lines to allow surface drainage to drain between the lots to the north, which is what most of this lot does now. And when we get into the wooded area here in the back, there is a wetland area and an area where water collects from this particular property. It then, when it gets enough water, will flow under East Road. There's a culvert. Step around here and see if I can find it. There's a culvert that is located right here. that picks up the water coming through, goes through to Mr. Dearborn's lot across the street, continues flowing in a westerly direction down behind Simone Drive, I think, if it gets that far, and eventually probably turns and gets into the pond that goes under Depot Street, and eventually, I think, finds its way to Broad Brook, I believe, if it does get that far. So that's where all of this particular site basically drains. Drainage calculations and drainage area maps were submitted to the town engineer, Len Norton. He's reviewed those and approved the drainage concept that we have for this particular subdivision. There are also some waivers that were asked for here, and those are as well in this memo. One of those would be sidewalks, a waiver of sidewalks. Obviously, there's no sidewalks out here in this area. If you were to grant a waiver, there would be a fee paid into the sidewalk fund, which I believe is 40% of the construction cost of the walk. And that would be calculated by the town engineer. And then that money, should you approve the waiver, would go into the sidewalk fund for new walks or repairs somewhere else in town. There's also a waiver of streetlights, I believe. Gotta go through this. I might have missed one here. And open space. Open space would be a fee in lieu of, which I understand now is the flat $2,000 per lot fee for open space, which I think is pretty much what you were doing for quite some time, some years back. And for a little while there, I think we went to the appraisal and 10%, but this would be a $2,000 per lot fee in lieu of open space that would be granted to the town upon the sale of each of these lots. So in Ruth's memo, she had a few comments, and let me go to, let's talk about agricultural buffer zones. There is a section in your subdivision regulations that talks about agricultural buffer zones. It talks about 100-foot buffer strip. It said when required shall be no less than 100 feet. So it appears to imply that it's not always required. And when I saw this, I started thinking about other subdivisions we've done in town, and one of the gals in our office, been with us since 1985 and has a better memory than I do. I asked her, said, Lee, what have we done some of these? And what about bundle strips? And she went back and looked, and she found some. And there's a lot of other subdivisions in town where it doesn't about agricultural farming activities that we didn't do. And in no case could I find where we actually provided a buffer and plantings. We did, however, provide the note, which is in your regulations, which basically says this property abuts or is in proximity to an active agricultural or farming operation, which is permitted zoning use and protected in accordance with section 19A 34 1A of the Connecticut General Statutes. It has agricultural operations sometimes emit runoff, odor, noise, chemical spray, drip, either during the day or night. It may be annoying to some people. We have put that note on every one of those plans where we abutted an agricultural operation. However, we never did really provide a buffer. The 100-foot buffer in this case would be to a property that's across the street. It's not directly adjacent. If we go to the south side of Reservoir here, there's a parcel that actually just recently sold. I think Grosick bought it. I don't know if they had tobacco there this year or not. I don't. They did. Okay. They're tobacco farmers from Enfield. They bought this farm. And they did take it back. It's currently a cover crop on it. There's rye on it. And if we take into account the 50-foot road right away and the 50-foot building setback, the houses are 100 feet away. And this is just my opinion. I don't know what you folks all think. I don't see a buffer being of any advantage here. If I were to live there, I would want the view of the field because in my opinion, it's very pretty to look at. There may be a handful of days where maybe there's some plowing, maybe there's some spraying, maybe there's some people working there. That wouldn't bother me. I would rather have the view. And I'll just share this with you. When I moved to Ellington 30 some odd years ago, my wife and I decided to live where we live because it's got 86 acres of ag land where the development rights were sold. It borders me on two sides. The other side of the road, one neighbor. And it's the best neighbor I've ever had is the agriculture. And we've had silage corn, we've had hay, we've had cows, we've had manure. I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it. I've got a beautiful view all the time, no traffic, no cars, dead end street. I wouldn't want a buffer. That's my opinion. I know you can require it. I don't think it's necessary. And I think it's up to the individual, quite honestly. That's just my opinion, but it is up to you as to what you may want to require there. Now, I can share with you the plans that we did find that you approved. Everybody wants to look at them. These are some that we did some years ago. One of them is, this is Broadbrook Meadows, which is essentially right across the intersection here that was done back in 2020. It's 15 lots here, butts the Sargent Farm. The notation is on here, but there's no formal buffer. We did another subdivision for Doug King down at Dempsey Road back in 2012, where the lots that were approved abut agricultural land. The notation is on the plan, no formal buffer. We did 3 lots on Windsorville Road back in, let's see, this was in 02. And this was a parcel that abutted the Mulnight Farm. And I think, let's see, two sides, the south side and the west side. So it was tobacco. The notes on the plan, no buffer. And I would say here that it would be appropriate to place the note again on the plans indicating that it's in an area of agricultural use. My opinion would be that the buffer isn't necessary and leave it up to the individual owners. If anybody wants to take a look at these, you can. I'll leave them here in the record. There are street trees that are being planted. Those are required in your regulations. So each one of these lots does have 2 street trees. And really the only lots that I guess would come into play here would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots. This one is up on the corner. It's really across the street from the house and the barn. The ones over on East Road do not directly abut the agriculture. These are far enough away. So it's really up to you. Could be a bit planting on the quite honestly. Most people, if I want to live there, probably even want the buffer because it's a beautiful view to look out over the field. So that was one of the items that's in, again, in Ruth's memo. The others relate to the waivers that we talked about. And then the issue with the wells, the water wells. You, in your memo from North Central, which we've talked about this, we were in here informally with you. Wes put a notation in his memo indicating that there is contaminated wells in this area on Depot Street. He actually provided us with a listing of wells on Depot Street, which I gave a plan to you a while back, showing those which had contamination. And the health department is strongly recommending that the city water be brought to this property. And we talked about that. And the cost of bringing water to here is such that if it were required, this subdivision won't happen. It's over $40,000 per lot additional cost for development to get the water to these sites. So when we discussed that here with you, we talked about putting in filtration systems for each one of these lots. And typically what happens now is when someone comes in and applies for a building permit, obviously they have a plan, a plot plan that shows each one of these lots, shows a septic system, and it shows a well location. And the developer or the well driller goes to the health department and gets a permit to drill a well. He puts the well in, the house is completed, the water is tested at a lab, and that test information then goes back to the health department. It's reviewed by the health department to see whether it meets the criteria or not as a potable water well based on the state public health code. And if it doesn't, then they're going to have to install some type of a treatment system to make it comply so that it could be used as a potable water well. We talked about, I think, carbon filter type treatment systems. I had some correspondence with Aqua Pump up in Stafford, explained to them what we had here, gave them the information that Wes had given me. And they said, yes, we do these. We do many, many of them for the state of Connecticut every year. We maintain them, we install them. They're about $4,000 per home to install and about $900 of maintenance every 3 to 5 years. And it's very common. We had a conversation with you, I think, and when we left here, I thought we were under the understanding that this is how it would work. And this is typically what happens when somebody comes in, applies for a building permit, goes through this process. This all comes after the zoning approval. And I see in your regulations, and Ruth has pointed it out to you, that it says you must submit suitable, the lot must be suitable for the installation of adequate water supply consisting of a drilled well, artesian well, community water supply. And the developer shall submit evidence as to adequacy, quality, and quantity of the water supply. It shall be certified by the Board of Health or its agent. Well, its agent is North Central Health Department. And that's what happens. When the well is drilled and the well is tested, the information goes to the health department and they review it. And it's either acceptable or it's not acceptable. If it's not acceptable, then filters have to be put in to make it acceptable. This seems to be indicating that this information has to come to you, and maybe I'm not reading it right. If in order for you to provide an approval for a subdivision or a development, I'm not quite sure how you do that. It's never been done that way in the past. This commission is under subdivisions on wells, and I don't think any evidence of water, wells, and testing and potability was ever submitted prior to an approval. So I guess all of that said, I was under the assumption after our last meeting, and I think Attorney Case would agree with me, that this would go the same route that every other subdivision ever went. We move forward, we get a building permit, we drill a well, we test the well, we send the information back to the health department, they review it. Here's what you have. Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not okay. It's not okay. Okay, how do we resolve that? We talked about, which I think we agreed to, putting information on the plans indicating this could be the case, putting a deed and if the information in the deed, so when somebody buys one of these lots, they know that, okay, we have a filtration system and we know that we have to maintain it. It would be in the deed and the conveyance. And we thought that was the right way to do it. And a notation on the plan, we think that that's the right way to do it. But I'm not sure how we would provide this information prior to an approval. So all of that said, I guess, we need some input again from you and from Ruth. And I'm assuming Wes is not here because he wanted to see me. I think he's here for some input from the health department. So I'm sure Wes has got something to say. And I don't know, Rich, whether you have any input?
I was just going to add one of the things, if we remember when we had the informal, is that I would work with the town attorney with a restriction deed restriction information in the deed to each owners, which would then pass on any subsequent owner about maintaining the filtration system if we have to do that, and the requirement of that owner to do that. So, and I'll work with the town attorney on the language of that, but that would be something that would be in the land records as to each one of these 10 lots, assuming that we need the filtration system, which but we assume that we will be based on the area. So,
Yeah, I actually went back and looked at the area of Depot Street that Wes provided the information on, and I counted the number of houses. Because I was looking at it and going, well, how many of these houses actually have contamination and how many don't? And it was a little less than half that are contaminated. It was like 40 some odd %. And so, which is probably a fairly high number, I guess you could say. So the chances of one of these lots having it is probably pretty good. But I would say that some lots here are probably going to have a filtration system and some of them aren't. I mean, I don't know if I can ask you, Steve, but you're right across the street.
Talk about that.
Okay, Steve's here, he's probably gonna talk to you about it. As to what he has. I think I told you when I was here before, I live kind of over the hill in Ellington, but not too far from here, and I have a filtration system in Trace. And I've been there 30 some odd years. Here, I think it works, although honestly, my wife buys bottled water, which kind of drives me crazy, but it's kind of expensive. We don't really drink the water. I never did. We drink bottled water. We use the water, obviously, for washing our clothes and washing dishes, although that water is treated with an RO system, which is right in the kitchen, and it's a simple filter to change underneath the kitchen sink. There's not much to it. It's a little different than the carbon filter that we're talking about here. So
the only thing is that I don't know whether or not we had given you a copy of the DEP's statements on the on filters for the wells. If not, so I would like to submit that.
You have one, because I'm giving my last one away.
I've got
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So that's a basic overview of the application. I think I've covered Ruth's comments in the memo to you with regard to wells, open space, waivers, agricultural buffers. So that said, I don't really have any more to add at this point in time. If the commission has any questions, or if you want to go to public first, I'm not sure what you want to do, but
We'll ask a few questions first.
okay, go ahead.
Ruthann, do you want to start off with the whole water issue, how the communications you've had with North Central and what their concerns are?
Well, the letter that the commission received in December expressed their concerns, and they strongly recommended that the subdivision be connected to public water due to the contamination in the area. So I'm just going to, in my review of the application, I was very systematic. The document. This came up, and having freshly read December letter and seeing the section requiring approval, that's why the memo looks like it does. And some of what you mentioned tonight, Tim had talked to me about on the phone, about the history of that requirement and whether it or not it had come up on other occasions in that same way. I reached out to Wes to see if we could updated comment from the health department, because what we had in the file was from December last year. I also spoke with the service manager from Connecticut Water Company about water availability. And that's when he mentioned that a couple of houses on Depot in the neighborhood just happened to hook up to public water because of some issues with their wells. I asked him if it was feasible to get water service to this subdivision by way of an easement, perhaps, because there's property right adjacent that I believe is under the same ownership, maybe different company name, private name, but an easement to Depot Street. And he said if it were engineered properly, it was feasible to do that. My recommendation was to get water quality data, and the commission had asked for that initially during the informal discussion, to put a well in and see what was there to help make some informed decisions when planning a subdivision. And on the return, to offer the discussion, that's when we saw the filter information. So my thought was that in order for the health department to make a call on quality, they would need the information of the water quality data. So that's why I asked for that. And you talk through a process of a lot by lot, kind of after getting an approval without the requirement for hooking up to public water, to go and seek individual well approvals. So, because that's how it's typically done, is what I heard from you.
Jay, just to clarify, you're saying typically the well is approved at what step?
So the way this typically works is, let's say, for example, the commission approves this. The developer files his plans, his Mylar, so on and so forth. And he gets a contract on this lot. We would then prepare a plot plan for the specific house that's going to go there, along with a septic system design and a well location. That would go with a set of house plans through the departments here, the zoning department, the building department, and it would also go to the North Central Health Department for review of the leach field and the well location. Once the building permit is issued, construction would start. The house would go in, septic system would go in, the well would go in. When the well goes in, the well is tested. It's tested for water quality. Okay, so all of those tests are done for all those things, and Wes could tell you what they all are. I don't know off the top of my head, but it includes the EDB and the other item that's in the area. Those are tested for. There's a yield test that's also done to make sure we have an adequate amount of water. I think it's a 4-hour test. Wes knows better than I do. I don't know exactly, but I believe it's a 4-hour yield test to see how much water can we get. Are we getting a gallon per minute? Are we getting 5 gallons? Are we getting 10 gallons? That's part of it. That's all reviewed by the health department. So after that's done, the well's drilled, the testing is done, goes to the lab, the information goes back to the health department, and they review it. It may be fine. And they're going to issue what they call a discharge permit, I believe, which allows them to use the water well for their water supply and to be able to flush their toilets and take showers and so on and so forth. And then they apply for their CO, certificate of occupancy, through the building department, and they can move in. If the testing shows that we have some contamination, then the health department is going to say, no, your well does not meet the minimum criteria. You have to do something to get rid of the EDB or whatever it might be. Check, check, check. And the developer comes back. They may recommend something, or they go to their well guy and say, well, we've got this. How do we get rid of that? As when we talked informally, I had spoken with Aqua Pump, and they said, we do these all the time. Here's what we do. We come in and we put in this charcoal filter system, which Rich just passed out some information on you, which came from Deep. And we put these units in, and it will take care of the problem. They will then retest back to the lab, new results, back to the health department. They review it again. Did it work? Oh, if it didn't work, they're back to the drawing board again. We got to do something different. If it did work, he's then going to sign off. They're going to go back to the building department. They're going to ask for their CO, and someone's going to move in. In this case, because of some of the discussions we had, there's going to be something filed in the deed on the land records indicating that they have this system that needs to be maintained Also a note on the plan that's maybe a little more generic, saying there may be or could be, depending on a lot by lot basis, and we would have to come up with some kind of a notation, I think, that makes sense. That could be added to the plan so that somebody may be looking at this thinking that, well, we may want to live here. What kind of issues might we have? Well, we've got a farm across the street. Maybe we don't like that. Maybe we do like that. We may have an issue with a water well. Maybe we don't want to deal with that. Maybe we're not as concerned about that. There is a filtration system. So they have all this information up front before they go here and put their money down and decide to buy a house. So we thought we kind of had all the bases covered. The part about, and I'm talking too much.
We got a long way to where my question was going, but section 6.9.3 of the subdivision requirement says no permit for a building shall be issued unless the water system has been approved, as noted previously. So that says the water system has to be approved prior to a building permit.
Doesn't happen.
So
But that's the reg.
can I interject?
Yeah.
So I had the same scenario happen to my own personal house. Same scenario, you build the house, you put it up, septic goes here, well goes 250 away from the septic. You drill the well, you pray what you get. I got bad water.
Yeah, that should not.
So you can't get a building permit, a CO, I should say, unless your water is approved. So exactly what you're saying is what happens in the real world. I don't know what that says offhand, but
The real world, you test the well.
you test the
The
well.
well did not come back.
I get reverse osmosis system, whatever. At the end of the day, we don't drink the water. You can bathe in it, you can whatever in it, but you can't drink it.
Yep.
And I get a gallon a minute. So my own personal view, this is the way it works in the construction world.
I understand what your regulation says.
So we never put the wells before the buildings go in, and never. I've never seen it.
Wouldn't that be,
No.
that's the crux of all this. If you're putting a house in, don't you
No.
need water supply?
Well goes last, always.
Yeah, but
It has to be signed off by those guys, and then they test, like I said, they test it. If it's got whatever salt, whatever, then they do the systems like they show here, and they put it in until they get good drinking water.
So I would just like to offer that
Hmm?
there's planning and there's reacting. These regulations are planning and they're looking broadly at issues. There's a known issue of groundwater contamination, and this is the group that makes the decisions at the higher level, not at the last step in the process, but the planning process. So I just want you to have that in your mind.
So I get that. I've been in construction for 40 years, and that's not the way it goes. The way it goes, the well goes in last, and there's opportunities to fix it at first osmosis or whatever, and that's what you do.
That's reactionary. That's all.
Yeah, don't you have if
So
we
you-
know there's a problem, don't we have it on us to make sure?
So, okay,
The regs are written.
they drill the wells first. What does that get you? They're gonna just do,
Before they build the house and spent all the money building the house, they find out if the well's any good.
just doesn't work that way.
go ahead.
Must have said anything yet, but it's my,
I have a question that I think is,
okay. Maybe it is.
or the attorney is going to need to answer related to this. You're abutting a farm. The farm has every right to apply whatever is legal to apply to its crops or its animals. And the water quality can change with time. So a one point in time sample isn't necessarily representative. And the other question I really have, so I don't see how it gets tested over time. When it's public water, it gets tested over time. So if a new contaminant comes up or the levels change, you know. But I can think of a couple of instances where there was contamination of wells, and I'll say the taxpayers had to pay for the water line. So I questioned if in time, if the people don't maintain their filtration systems or don't like having them because it's an annoyance, are Are they gonna come back, make a complaint that it's unsafe?
It's in the deed.
And will the town or Connecticut Water Company be forced to run a water line for them at the cost to all the ratepayers? Because that's how it seems to have happened in the neighborhood by the school. There was contamination and the town paid for the water line. In my neighborhood, we had substandard water and Connecticut Water Company at the cost to all ratepayers paid for the streets around me to run the water lines and hook up all the houses. So I didn't personally pay, but all the ratepayers of Connecticut Water Company paid. So is that fair to the ratepayers to put, if you have known contamination, put it on all the Connecticut Water Company in the future?
Do you have something you wanted to?
Mine was just if we know it's an active problem coming into it, I feel it's different from going into blank raw land that you're assuming is good. If you already know there's a problem, don't we have a responsibility to make sure we head it off at the pass and handle it first?
We know there's some contamination in this area. And again, I'm going to defer to Wes, but you're going to get to him.
Right.
That we're going to put in 10 wells here. We don't know whether 10 wells are going to all be good. 10 wells are going to be contaminated.
Agreed.
3 wells, we don't know. We don't know until we drill the well. There are multiple wells, I think, on Depot Street, probably in this area, that don't have any contamination. We don't know the answer to that. We do know that we have the ability to put a filter on it to make it a potable water well. We know that.
What about the yield of the well?
The yield is, again, something that doesn't
No
come up.
guarantee.
They just drill deeper.
Correct.
That's what they have to do
And
until
hope.
they get the yield they need.
How do you
Yeah.
know to put something on there to purify the well? To the point of the technology is there.
The technology exists to filter.
It's there.
Yeah, even the DEP recognizes
Sampling,
that.
yeah.
Exactly.
It does.
It can be done.
So we can filter it out. The problem with getting a test before we're approved is what if we test and it's fine and the other 9 are not? Or that one's contaminated, or they're all contaminated. We have to be in a position to assume they all are.
So then run city water, then you don't have to worry about it.
No, if city water, we're not gonna do the subdivision.
Well, how far away is the water supply?
625 East
600
Street,
some odd feet coming down the road and then
420, another 400 feet. So it's over
1,000 feet.
So that's $100,000.
But if you were granted an easement, what's the closest lateral distance if you were granted an easement?
Even with an easement coming through there, we're still looking at probably something in the $200,000 range to run all these water mains. It's very expensive, hundreds of dollars a foot.
It's more, I was told almost 200 by a contractor today. Today's, the reality of today's.
That's right, Scott Hallman. Yeah. Same price.
So that's the problem, running city water. If city water was immediately available, we'd probably do that. But it's not, and the cost of bringing the city water makes this project not doable.
It's about $40,000. And if it's a 200-foot run, you're talking $40,000.
It's more, it's more than that. It's not 200 feet. Even if you go through the easement from that, to get to, you've got to bring it all the way down
It's still got to go all the way down. It's
to
gotta
East
go
Street.
both ways on.
And then I'm supposed to be the
Reservoir,
reservoir and then up
and
east.
then
We've
come
got to
down
run the lines
the
there.
road from the other side. So it's thousands of feet of water.
So anytime you drill a well, it's always potluck. Like, so, I get a gallon a minute. They had a frack. I still get a gallon a minute. My next door neighbor's got a well in the yard, 35 feet, and he gets 5 gallons a minute. So it's anytime you drill a well, it's potluck, no matter what house you build and where it's at. That's just the way the construction works. You build the house, you put the septic, you drill the well. And then it goes to North Central, they approve it.
That's the way I've seen it for over 40 years.
Yeah.
It's the way it works.
And they can't get a CO until the water passes.
How many homes in the area would you guess that have problems with the wells? But that wrong? I don't know how many. I know the area we looked at on Depot Street, it was 40 some odd percent. I own 4 of those houses. And I'll tell you, I'm not impressed with the filtration system. They don't change it every 3 years.
Right.
It says, I've had the same tanks in there for years. And you don't change them? I don't have anything to do with it. It's taken over by the state. Okay.
It's gotta be maintained.
Taxpayer.
And that's the state's fault.
Is it?
And that's the state's fault.
They come once a year and check the water.
They test it once a year?
Yeah.
Well, then it's passing.
Okay.
Well, I don't think the state's lying to you.
No. Okay.
I'm just. I don't know. I'm just-
No, you're right. State people don't lie at all. Okay. But I do have a few other questions I'd like to go besides the water. Right down here, these 2 houses. That's gonna be tough getting out. You come around that hill and it's blind.
That's why the town engineer asked for a sightline plan for the driveways to see that there was adequate sight.
It's gonna be
Provided.
It's gonna be tough because you can't see when you're coming in certain directions. You get a little bit of fog, and down in that area, it's always wet when it's raining hard. So, you know, people go around that puddle and I think that's gonna be tough.
And that's why the town engineer asked for a sightline plan so that we could demonstrate that you could see. We gave them that.
And Jay, you're gonna do they're gonna do
There's a
clearing?
bit of clearing along the edge there, yes. Yes. He recognized that as well and asked for some additional information.
On a slightly different subject, utilities, everything gonna be underground, power wise and stuff? Or are you putting poles in?
Our company.
Not up to the
Well,
builder.
my question is, if you're gonna put poles, why not throw lights on them?
We agree.
So the street lighting is a question. If you're looking for a waiver of street lighting and then you put a row of poles down there, I would probably maybe say we should put verbiage in, if there's poles on that street, then street lighting should be.
Street lighting should be provided. on the pole.
So are they going underground or above ground?
That's what he said, he doesn't know.
No,
No,
So you can only go on,
makes that decision, but what the Kowalski is suggesting, if there are poles are required, we require.
I understand that the power company
That would be acceptable.
the power company does not make that decision if you go underground or above ground. You can go
Okay.
for the power and the water, you.
Down the street, maybe.
Oh, down the street, sorry.
Down the street.
Each lot's gonna be underground, correct?
yes.
Right.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah,
I just don't
I'm
want,
the
Yeah.
Reservoir Road going down that way.
I just don't want, I just don't want to see 150 feet of wires going across there. Yeah, that's good.
That's a good point, Mike. They might use poles.
Right.
It's less costly.
So rather than asking for a waiver on streetlights,
No, I agree. There should be some,
because that's a very dark area. So if there's poles, there should definitely be lights.
especially right at the intersection.
Exactly.
That's absolutely acceptable.
Okay,
I have a question.
go ahead.
One of the things that came up in the regs was the 2 rear locks having
Oh,
one
the apron?
apron.
Yeah, you're right. We'll fix that. Not a problem. We did do that over on the other one. I forgot.
One more thing, on the rear lots, I can't see there, is there screening going by both driveways?
There's screening
Okay.
down both driveways and along the rears of the other lots. There's also screening.
Okay.
Yep.
You're good.
Anyone have anything else to ask at this point? Okay, so this is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that'd like to comment on this application? Okay. Did you sign the paper, please?
State your name for.
Yeah, there is, just so,
I'd be happy to.
thank you, sir.
Yeah, come on, Steve. You know, get your name on here?
Steve.
Yeah, I got it. Don't worry about it. Put your legs. No, I can't help myself. I put your real name. Well, at least the one we know.
Okay. Now you got two names.
Thank you.
Hopefully health department.
Okay, Paul Anderson, 89 Main Street, Brockville. Have a couple things on my mind now. I have no data on this property at all. These are just general comments, things to consider. Okay. I have concerns about wells and septic on the same property. Forget about how far away it is. I don't think it matters. It does to somebody, but not to me. This is going to be 10 septic systems. They're all going to have a potential impact on all 10 wells. You don't know. If the drainage is really good, depending upon the depth of the well, which is an unknown today, it's a maybe, then you could have potential issues there. And as an example, sewers were put on Rollicutt Road. Rollicutt Road, one or more properties connected to the sewer and the wells ran dry. Everything was fine up until then. As soon as they connected to the sewer, got rid of the septic, their wells went dry. That is a bad circumstance. Now they had to put in a new well. I don't know any more about the details of that, but it's a thing that sits in my mind about septic and wells on the same property, especially in a cluster.
Were they shallow wells? Do you know?
Probably, but the point being is, what are these wells? Nobody knows because nobody's done it. So we don't know where they're going to find water. Unless you want to start specifying depth in advance. I don't know how you do that, but that's all. It's a consideration. Keep it in mind. That's all. It's not a criticism because I don't know the property. Sidewalks. I have a thing about sidewalks. I don't like sidewalk waivers. You don't get sidewalks in town if you let people not put them in. There's no sidewalks there now, and there never will be if nobody ever puts any sidewalks in. Every subdivision should have sidewalks. That's my opinion. You're going to do what you're going to do. I won't criticize the results. The sight lines. If sight lines are calculated based on speed limits, that's a joke. People don't drive the speed limit. Ask the police department. So that sight line may be totally inadequate the way people drive. And you know what? Accidents happen because of the way people drive, not because of a design. Is it a problem? I don't know. Food for thought. So that's pretty much my comments on this project. And I don't take them as negative. They're only concerns.
Oh, I'm Steve Dearborn, 144 East Road. I live basically right across the street from this. The reason I'm here tonight is I didn't want to see any of those trees cut down. I want to see them cut down. There is a culvert there. Like you said, the water runs through that little valley there from behind all them other houses, and the way the land is pitched, that's all going to run down in that valley. Probably be a little more runoff with the grass being intact and everything, but whatever, that don't bother me. The water goes under the road and it was running across my lawn. So I piped and I hooked onto it and ran it into the woods that I own, so it didn't go across the lawn. Well, before I did that, I actually blocked it, not realizing I was blocking the water behind all these houses. And I guess it built up pretty good. It started to smell, and Lenny got a hold of me and said, we got to break that open. I said, I'll go there with a backhoe and break it open. I had to sign a waiver so you could go on my land with the backhoe and break it open. And the water goes. Well, there's wetlands in there somewhere. And I know the shit I went through for clearing farmland and wetlands. I just don't want the trees to be cut down, because when I come down like this into my driveway, yeah, the trees are blocking the cars that are coming this way, so you gotta look before I swing into my driveway, you know? I just don't want the trees cut down. I don't wanna have to look at the houses. I don't care if they build houses there. It's his land, he do what he want with it, as far as I'm concerned, you know? But, I don't want the trees cut down. The other thing is, you guys were talking a lot on this water. I have filters at my house. I've been in my house for over 35 years. And a lot of people on East Road and in that area have these filters. And the state paid to keep them checked, like every 3 or 4 years, they come out. And we don't pay a dime for it. But for some reason, there was some kind of a lottery or whatever they did. I don't know what they did. But some of the people got knocked off of that and they have to pay. For some reason, we didn't get knocked off. We don't pay. They come out every so and they change the filters. They're like big tanks like this, like oxygen tanks, you know. And
I think it had to do with the.
so they take care of everything. We don't pay for nothing. They just come out and do it and say goodbye and hi. And it's actually been the same guy since we've been living there that's been doing it, actually, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure it's based on.
Now, the reason for all that contamination was back when I was farming, Consolidated Cigar grew a lot of tobacco around. And they used Voralex and it contaminated the groundwater all through there, you know. And, you know, I guess if you tested Mrs. Yeoman's house that she just sold to the tobacco guy in Enfield, I mean, if you tested her water, you'd have a pretty damn good clue as to what's going to happen there. Mrs. Wolfersdorf's land there, I used to rent all that land in there. I never rented the Tyler farm there. I rented all the other land right around there. And they said her well was the worst contaminated well around. Okay. Wow. And so I'm sure other people in those houses right there have got the same problem. I've got the problem. I've never been concerned about my water with the filters, you know. You know, everything works good. The clothes get clean. I don't drink water anyway. I use it in my coffee in the morning. I shower, you know, but you know, I twitch once in a while. So that's about it.
It's fine. It's fine.
So no, I don't care what they do over there. I mean, if they got to get each well tested, and that's what they got to do. And if they need a filter, then they got to put a filter on. You know? And then the other concern that I had, not just now, is you know, when they built the houses over down in Kingshire, I guess on all the deeds they put in them that you have a gun club behind your house. Okay, that was put in those deeds. So when the people bought those houses, that they couldn't turn around and start fighting. Well, God, we got this noise every Sunday morning, you know? And, you know, these people should be really made aware of this, probably. Some parts of the farmers here should be in the deed. You have a farm across the street. So if you don't like that, you shouldn't buy the house. You know what I mean? The guy's got to be protected, I think, in my opinion, you know. But yeah, I mean, I got the filters. I'm all right with them, you know. And the only thing was, I just didn't want those trees cut down. That's my main concern, you know, the trees. I don't want them cut down. You know.
Jay, is that part of what Lenny talked about for line of sight?
It's just a little clearing of brush within the road right away. We're not, all of this development's within the open field. We're not cutting any trees.
He's saying they don't have any intention of
I
cutting.
thought that little jag of trees sticking out there like this, they're gonna hack that right off.
I don't think so, Steve. I think it's just the stuff that's right out along the edge of the road.
Yeah, cause see, when I come down around that hill, my driveway is basically right in the middle of that green. So I have to always watch the cars coming around this
Down the hill.
Yeah, before I make that swing in, you really gotta look. Because like Mr. Anderson said, they fly down that road. They do, they're not doing 30 miles an hour. You know, so you gotta really watch it. You know? Yeah, I don't care what they do over there. Just don't cut the trees down.
Let's go. Road. I'm concerned about the road going through there. That road has been there. I delivered papers down there in the 40s. And the two Sullivan houses up there, delivered papers there. And Adam Savage lived in the B, where Melrose Road, where Gable Street and the Roosevelt Road come out. That road's, who's paving the road? Who's doing the road now? The town gonna pave that road, put a whole road all the way out there? Fire department should not have a dead end road there. That road should go right out through to the other end, right to Depot Street. I got the map, the old map for the town, and that road always went through there. I used to sometimes ride my bicycle back on that road to get over the Reservoir Road to get the houses up on Skinner Road that way. So I'd like to know, is the developer going to pave that road all the way out through? Or is the town got to do it or what? Who's doing that?
It's a town right of way. The town's maintaining
The
that.
town's going to pave the road all the way out through.
They're going to maintain that right of way. I don't know that they're going to
pave it all the way through so the fire department doesn't have to turn around at the end. We can bring trucks in from Ellington and so forth.
My understanding is that they stopped at the town line. That's already,
It's right at the town line.
that's where they
Right back there.
stopped.
The
So-
last house is at the town line.
Is it?
There are a couple
Goes right
lots
out here.
just away from,
Shows on the town map.
because it was,
Okay. That's
Straight out through.
because I went down that road myself. I went to go look at it and I was surprised that they stopped it. So my understanding was I thought they stopped it at the town line, but if it's,
It goes right through.
if it's our town all the way continuously through, I
Acting right at the end.
agree. But that's
Pave it there.
not really part of this application.
Oh,
land issue.
Yeah, that doesn't really apply to this application, but that's something that would have to be brought up with the Public Works Department. Anyone else? You just please make sure you put your name on the lists. Mr. Los also.
In the Central District Health Department. Wes and I came tonight because we wanted to be available in case anyone had questions for us. You have our letter that was written December 12th. You know, the regulations that we're allowed to enforce, which you can't just make regulations because we want to. Okay, we have to go by the regulations we have. As everybody knows, there's lots of gaps in regulations. The regulations aren't perfect. But had the lot not been split off from the subdivision in 2021, we weren't aware of that. That lot would have put the whole subdivision, and this is in our December letter, would have put the whole subdivision within the regulations that we could have required them to connect to public water. And I'm not understanding the difference in the cost of doing everything to develop any areas daily. I'm just stating perhaps from a perspective. Today, we also got a letter, and people have alluded to some of this today. We got an email, I gave you the copy from DEP and saying, letting you know we're working to connect properties located at 187, 186 Depot Road to the public water supply. They've been impacted with EPB, which requires the installation of a whole house granular activated carbon filter system, which I believe was already also detected TCP and the presence of nitrates above the maximum contaminant level. And they go on to say, without the connection, another whole house filter in line with the GAC filter would need to be installed to yield potable water. And that's the whole house reverse osmosis system. And then it says, given Deep's knowledge of the local groundwater quality, I would presume that both whole house filters, GAC and reverse osmosis, would likely be necessary to treat raw water to potable standards for any new private well in the vicinity of 187 and 186 Depot Road, and that they'll keep us in the loop. So one thing that I don't know if you're considering or if it was a part of previous conversations is that there's water treatment, wastewater as well. So roughly, and Wes, more of an expert than I, will correct me if I'm misspeaking. So for every gallon of water that goes through a full house reverse osmosis filter, it uses about another 4 gallons of water. Is that correct?
Yeah, potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So these labs, I'm thinking are roughly 1.5 acres, but someone else can correct me if that's not correct. So you have a lot of water going into the property for the septic, through the septic system, and then another amount from the water treatment going into a water treatment wastewater system. I never say that clearly. And so we like to be preventive in nature. And so we're here. We think it's important. We wanted to be here to answer questions. A couple of things that people spoke about today, that the state comes and does the filters. Some of those funding streams are drying up, which is why I think you mentioned some people got kicked off of it. Others that'll last for a little bit longer, but those are not getting renewed. So that's a lot of after the fact costs that someone has to bear when we already kind of have this information. So I just wanted to make sure it was brought to your attention. Yes.
So if a new development goes in and the wells are contaminated, does the state fund these filters and the maintenance of them?
These new ones?
Right.
No. And interesting, the conversation about wells in Massachusetts, they have to.
Yeah, some other states, they do make them put the wells in first.
Yeah. That's all I'm going to say.
So to clarify, you're telling me that the RO systems and the carbon system actually have a discharge on themselves and they're discharging higher concentrated?
The carbon filters do not have a discharge, but in the case of, I know people have mentioned reverse osmosis systems do have a discharge.
And you're discharging a higher concentrated contaminant? Is that what it's?
Right in your yard?
Into your septic?
No, so what it does, it actually eats away your septic system and eats the concrete, the discharge of that it's salt.
That's a different type of treatment system.
So that's why now there's requirements for wastewater, water treatment, wastewater. I always say it the wrong way. And it's almost like another mini septic system, if you will, to keep it separate and keep it from going. A lot, in back decades and years, people would put them right into the septic systems, and depending on what the escalations were in the water, it could erode away.
So if you're the lucky person who gets the clean well and doesn't have to put in a treatment system, and your neighbor does, and then injects the contaminants right back next door, aren't you in time going to get the problem?
Well, you're putting in holding tanks.
Or is it, or is it a holding tank and it goes to the sewage treatment plant?
It's like another
Leaching
septic system. That's the best way that I can describe it. And there's specific separating distances and all that are required.
And fillers and charcoal.
So, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Just understand, the system we're proposing is not that. It's the grass.
But we don't know what the contamination
No,
is, so
you can read there, it doesn't create contamination. Even
there's no discharge on this one, is that what you're saying? There's no discharge on the system?
So I understand it now.
So there's no guarantee that's gonna
What you're
work.
talking about is that system versus osmosis.
but
That
it just,
system,
But will this system eliminate all known contaminants?
if you read we move them to the. It doesn't necessarily mean it's coming at 100% of the.
but isn't it,
Even the state requires.
but isn't it the local health district that decides what, I'll say, potable for a well?
No, it's the state of Connecticut sets the levels. The standard.
Right.
And what we do, just to understand, we're assuming that all 10 wells are gonna have contaminants. That's the assumption we've made,
But do we
for
know?
cost purposes.
Yeah, but is the
And we're gonna
contaminants
connect-
EDG, nitrates, or something else? Or all
The
three?
system we're gonna put in reduce the contaminants to a level that, so that they will say the water is potable. We have to do that.
Does the health department agree?
But to me, it's hard to know what kind of system you need until you know what the contaminants are.
Right.
Correct.
So you know, that's why I'm asking, is this system the magic bullet that no matter what's in that ground, it's going to eliminate it?
One eliminator.
I mean, and make it to an acceptable
To
level?
the health department.
So rate it on everything. This thing will take out everything that's in it that could possibly be there?
I think we have to rely on the health
First of all-
department for the
First
expertise.
of all, if there was, I don't know, if there was toluene, there was PPH in there, then you probably would be doing something different than this.
Right, so that's my point is.
Don't
We
know what it-
understand this cost. When we do the testing,
Mhm.
we have to submit it to them.
Right.
That testing will tell us what's in there. And then our filtering system has to take it to a level that makes the water potable and acceptable to them.
So there may be a drastic redesign of your system
Absolutely.
once you find out
So
exactly.
you might have two systems. You might have an RO for the salt water, or you might have another system for the contaminants,
Got it.
Yeah,
right?
You're just asking.
But I know one thing, if you do an RO system for your whole house, that's like a huge tank and they're a lot of money. They're 30 grand. I know a guy who just did one. The whole house got a big thing in his basement.
I don't think that's the situation that exists here. I think we pretty well know what exists here.
But I think we heard from the
Say
people
something
who,
here, okay, I built my house, had the water tested, everybody said it was okay. And then they came out and then they said, hey, you got EDP in your system. We're gonna put these tanks in. Now, I have these tanks in for 45, close to 50 years. And I'm still seeing sediments because I had a pounder well, not a drilled well. It doesn't go down 350 feet. I still see sediments making it through the filters, 2 filters. And it also, when I have some problem with my well and I had.
How old are your filtering systems? You say they're
I
40 years
didn't,
old.
they've been there for 100 years. I don't know. They've been there a long time. I didn't.
Technology.
I was telling you that I don't think that they're all the cat's meow.
So here's kind of what I'm seeing though is when the homeowner is responsible for the system, it doesn't get upgraded. It doesn't
doesn't get
necessarily
tested.
get tested or maintained at an adequate,
it's not.
because it's all dependent on what the person can afford, maybe.
What we've been told based on this, again, we're dealing with EDP,
We don't know what we're
TCP,
getting.
those two. Our person has told us, this is what it's gonna cost for the filtering system. This is what it's gonna cost on a try every 3 years. So what we wanna do is to make sure that people understand they're getting this system, they have to maintain it. We're gonna do it in a way that requires them to maintain it, so you can't, as you know, it's still America.
And it's
We're going to somebody's.
exactly blood from a stone and, by.
If anybody's smart.
force them to do it.
Their health.
Then what?
Health of their family.
Bad product.
They're going-
Yes.
they're
It's allowed the bad product here.
Otherwise, you're just
Yep.
stupid.
Sounds gonna-
And there are people that are stupid and
Because you
fool.
know,
The testing will tell us what's in there,
have a chance.
and it's up to us to produce the filtering system that will take it to a level that makes it portable.
I'm the lowest in Melrose Road. Canadian Water Company runs right up Depot Street, right by that. The line that they're putting in down on Abbey Road for the town building down there. That took the first selectman told me the cost of that line is $100,000 from Route 5 all the way up there. So I can't see a big cost going in for a water line for these houses here. And they could put a hydrant in there, and all those people living there, their insurance rates would be lower because they could within 1,000 feet of a hydrant. So it would be an advantage. Don't worry about all these systems you gotta put in and pay for every year. Let the water company come in there, put a line up there into the house, put a hydrant out there, and you'd be done with a lot of filters.
Yes, yeah.
So based on the information,
Oh, God.
Steve Dearborn, 144 East Road. Like they said, from the fumigant, for the nematodes, for the tobacco, the EDPs, I got the filters. We just had our water. They sent us a letter. State did have the water tested. You know, with a nice, clean bottle. I believe they sent us the bottle. Have to take it over to, I think it's Cook Hill Road in Windsor there to the experiment station. It's next to the experiment station where they test the water. And our water came back perfectly clean. Nothing wrong with my water. So that tells me my filters are working. You know, I'm not concerned about it, you know. But I don't know. As long as people know what they're getting into, you know.
Hey, Jay.
based on the information that we have, again, this came from the health department through Wes and from the state. Agriculture and basically tobacco is the culprit. So it's ETB. I think in the handout I gave you a while back, I had it highlighted. And the other one is trichloropropane, which I think is that fumigant, Steve? Yes, that you're talking about. I believe that's what it is. And the activated charcoal filter system that we're talking about, at least as I'm told, takes care of both of these. And that's typically what's found in this area. And I'm waiting for Wes to jump in if I'm not telling you the truth, but I believe I am. And based on this information, I gave this to Aqua Pump and said, here's what we think we have. How do you treat it? And that was the information they gave me. Also, and now it's making sense what they said to me, because I didn't quite understand when they said they do 3,000 to 4,000 of these a year for the state of Connecticut. Well, now based on what Commissioner Sherry is telling me, now I understand. They're working through the state, going out and servicing all of these systems. And they also install the systems. And the number they gave me was $4,000 for the original installation and $900 for maintenance every 3 to 5 years. That's currently what their rate is to install this, which is on the builder initially, and then the maintenance every 3 to 5 years at $900 to come in and service it and replace the canister. And my understanding is the primary canister goes to the reserve canister and a new one goes in its place. Yes. And that's how they switch them. And that's the way he explained it to me. And he sent me the information, which I provided to you. And that's what we're going on here. And if it's something different than that, I'm assuming health department's going to let us know. Or if we find something different than that, then we've got to deal with it. And if it requires some other type of filtration system or this and another system, then that's what they have to do. You know, you talked about, you know, a sample well. Well, that could be done. I mean, we could pick a lot and say, okay, we're going to build this house and we could drill a well. It may or may not be representative of what you're going to get on the rest of the lots. I don't know that that tells you anything. If it came back clean, you'd say, oh, this is great. Let's build them all. And all the rest of them could be bad. You just don't know. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what you're going to get. And I think Jim said it. When you drill a well, you just keep your fingers crossed and say, I hope we get a good one.
But isn't it when they're in the state program, the water quality gets tested every year? So you know it's working. If there is no oversight in this situation, if it's not in the state program, that anyone will test it to pick up an added contaminant.
Or change contaminant.
Or change.
Yeah, exactly, change in something.
The only thing we can do, and we're perfectly willing to do it, they purchaser of the home, the occupant of the home, very much aware of this, and require them by deed and by instrument that's up to them to maintain the system in accordance with what the system says should be. It's the only thing we can't do.
How is that enforceable?
Well, I'm not gonna ask.
Unless you bond them, that's it.
That's,
Yeah.
I mean, first off, you can't do that. Because it's still America. These
Can't
people
go in
have,
their house, right?
all we can do is tell them, you gotta do this. By deed, tell them you gotta do it. I'm not gonna put the onus on the town of East Windsor to enforce it, because that's not fair. That's not part of the bargain. So we'll do everything we can to make sure that people do that. And if they don't do it, they're just frankly foolish.
So that's why I'm kind of looking at, is the onus on us is to protect people from themselves too, sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
And from,
The only thing.
I guess, we also have to worry about.
Once it
them
changes
not doing
hands
it,
or,
and it changes hands and doesn't get done. And then someone's upset over the bad water quality and there's a big hoopla and the town has to fund the connection to Connecticut Water.
When divided by 10 lots, how much more would it really be?
Well, it's 40 grand compared to 400 grand for a water line.
Yeah, but all the taxpayers get stuck with that bill.
It's $40,000 worth of equipment compared to 400 grand for a water line. That's what it comes out to.
well, at this point, there's a couple of issues that obviously we need to clean up. As far as your memo goes, and we don't have anything at this point ready for even to put anything in as far as a motion. So at this point, I think we still need to continue the public hearing, do a little bit more legwork, get some of these details cleaned up and see where that takes us at our next meeting.
I agree, but I think I would like to note that I'm very impressed that the health department came all the way out here to talk to us. In my years on the commission, that's never happened before.
That's a first.
And that says something. The fact that they're here as the local health director and the technical expert from the health department.
Thank you.
Yep.
You know, you should say something about the water quality too.
Oh, it does.
I have a feeling there's, you know, two things going on here. One, it's great that they're here, but two, there's also a reason that they're here.
Okay, so I'd like a motion to continue the public hearing for our next meeting, which is November 26th.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing on application PZ 2024-16. The applicant is MJMT Enterprises. It concerns a special use permit for a 10-lot residential subdivision, including 2 rear lots, and we will continue it until our next meeting, which is November 26th.
And there's a motion to continue. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Second by Wayne. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Unanimous. You continue till the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have no old business, no new business. Under other business, the election of officers. Per our bylaws, we need to have all regular members present, so we have to postpone that until all regular members are present. So we are moving on to our POCD update.
Yeah. So you can do it. Filters, yeah. Have your water fresh. You don't put in a finer filter.
Cause I did that.
Yeah, you start dropping down.
I don't know if it's on here or at home.
Oh,
You couldn't say, gee, I can open that way.
It's dry as can be. Dry, it's. Doesn't have the challenge. No rain.
Hey, gentlemen, we're continuing our meeting, so if you want to have a conversation, could you please take it in the hall. Thank you.
So there's a couple of things I want to talk about. The first thing is the 2016 Plan of Conservation and Development had a very long list of action items. And I have had meetings with the first selectman, with the town engineer, with the superintendent of schools, kind of going through these lists and categorizing them, stuff that we've completed, items that Mike and I went through, thinking some of these things could be brought forward. So we have our document, conservation and development, and these are all the items that we're going to need to consider in our revision, which were for the most part considered with the previous versions. But if there were a community development action, we would have that. We do, but we would have that considered. The need for affordable housing. Just last year,
We did a plan.
we did that with the plan. Protection of existing and potential surface and groundwater drinking water supplies, which is very appropriate for the evening.
Yep.
The use of cluster development, which you do if you have a planned residential community, right? The state and regional plans of conservation and development. And there's a neat setup in the regional plan, which would be helpful, I think, for the commission with all sorts of action items and which of the strategies you have that it would touch. So if you were doing a special permit and you needed to find alignment with the POCD, it would make like kind of a tool.
Alignment easier.
Yeah, I like it. The physical, social, economic, and governmental conditions and trends. The needs of the community. So the survey helps us a lot with that aspect, with discussions on transportation and health and education. Education came up as one of the top 4 issues, both with the system and the schools, facilities themselves. Objectives of energy efficiency, energy efficient patterns of development. I know our subdivision regs talk about the placement of the houses and, to maximize if you wanted to use rooftop solar or protection and preservation of agriculture. That's a key issue that came up in the survey as well, lost to solar. And then the kind of new adders are sea level change, which we're not so impacted, but the storms, the microstorms can get us. Remember that erosion on Wells Road.
The climate change, yeah.
And then the need for technology and infrastructure in the municipality. That kind of sounds like the radio system or, that kind of thing. Just wanted to make sure we got that. So all these action items, they went pretty deep. I think we had like 90.
Yeah, I wonder if
and so
we had too many.
Well, we think so.
Just to be manageable.
Yeah. So we went through, and the green ones it's the whites. Some of it seemed like ongoing efforts And, you know, did we accomplish those? So the greens were accomplishments. They established open space funding. We have the fee in lieu of, and the salmon color is what we're thinking rises to the top to go forward into the revision, this year's revision. So that's continue to develop open space evaluation tools. So, you know, for identifying key parcels that would make sense. And I think one of the other things that would go on here, it would be trails. That was something that came up with the ARPA funding. Loud and clear that folks want to have places to go out hiking. So we could add something like that. Protecting the environment. We have adopted the aquifer protection regulations. I don't think that we might be as finished with the with the environmental programs and organizations. I don't really, it's not a loud thing in this town. Be more proactive in preserving and protecting our wetlands, vernal pools, bogs, and watersheds. I think we could. I think we're a very, very wet town, but we do have some pretty important ecosystems. Next presentation, I'll show you just the connectivity, the potential. Like a lot of work went into getting open space in a corridor, and filling in those gaps would be. But I think for our wetlands, I think we should identify those critical habitats. Assess.
It's not every wetland is.
It isn't, no.
As important as some, so it's like, what's really important?
Right.
Don't we already know what they are?
I would think, but.
I would think, yeah.
But having to protect them all is.
But if you had a tiered system, kind of in your regulations, maybe you have, if you have a critical habitat that you know has endangered species and.
Yeah, there's got to be something like a state map that says, here's where
Right.
the spotted salamander lives.
One
There.
You're talking like increasing buffers and things like that.
Like right now we have a review, an upland review, but if we had a more valuable system that we wanted to say, well, there'll be a 50-foot buffer around this, or
But isn't that only triggered when somebody comes in? We're not being proactive chasing it. It's just triggered when somebody comes in, messing around with it.
So that actually happened in Enfield, there was a spotted salamander, and it's not the whole big development. And probably 20 years ago, it actually, guy came in and was like, oh, there's dangerous species you had in the book, and then guess what? The whole development stopped.
When I worked with the utilities, they had to put lights in culverts they put in for the salamander crossing.
Oh.
And
So he could see.
I think
I love
DOT had to put like tunnels under the highway for turtles.
Yeah, probably.
Excellent.
So
I want to be a turtle.
it would be nice to have an active historic preservation commission. That would, if we have those cultural assets, if we had an active group. Preserving agricultural component of East Windsor. That's
important to people.
Very important. Protect scenic roads. Propose a scenic road ordinance to be authorized by the PZC, and that actually we have a draft.
Can the PZC adopt a scenic road ordinance, or wouldn't the town
it would
do it?
be
Recommended.
The town has to do it.
Yeah.
But the agricultural commission
is going to identify that.
They've drafted it already for the PZC's consideration.
Oh.
And yeah, it's kind of hot off the press, but I'm timing workshop stuff. And that actually was one of the items when there was a real rallying around that Thrall Road, the solar that's coming. The public hearing, we had pushed on the scenic road but it was really a concept in the plan and not, you don't really have this now. And so we have it, maybe we have more.
Croydon did make a comment that that would be something that they would consider
Yeah.
if we had such a designation.
Yeah.
I think it's nice when you have a map and it says whatever is a scenic road and then you drive it or bike ride it or whatever. It like points people to go see it.
Yeah. And if there's anything else on the, like if down below, you're thinking that we should keep it, like this scenic driving tour. We're being silent on it right now, just in order to limit the number of.
Yeah, and until we have one, we can not, one can't come before the other.
So we have our regulations that we've added, the architectural style. Bring that one. Village district zoning, got that. Gave you your new maps that show the Warehouse Point district. Going forward, there was a farmers listening session where they talked about considering with special use permits that prime soils and agricultural component, residential development. So we put that, we left that actually. So review and refine regulations to further promote fair and affordable housing.
I feel like we did a lot on that.
We did. But we're putting it in here to keep it at flood. That's because that's a huge issue, and the state's going to review our plan.
I just feel like we did it. What more do you want?
Develop regulations that will allow for mixed use and mixed income housing in key village areas, and that's in there. That's built in. So maybe those should be green.
Yeah, it's in green. There it is in green.
So move forward with planning and development of Warehouse Point Village. So that's just the implementation. Tie it into the transit oriented. That's been done. That's great. So this one I think is interesting to consider the effectiveness of the existing TZ5. Whether that still makes sense. And then there's a swath of industrial land along the railroad track. And that was in the previous, should we expand or minimize? In Broad Brook, it's right through the middle of the aquifer.
Can't do anything there.
The rail line.
It is. It actually
North of Town Hall.
So they come up. Well, they come up. The trains are parked. They're not active. They're right behind us.
Yeah, but
right there.
It stops
here.
And then when you get to Park Hill, there's no track there at all.
Yeah.
Right. So north of Town Hall, it's like not a corridor.
So but they're coming down through Enfield with that other connecting side. They're redoing.
I thought they were trying to do a bike trail.
No, they're putting rails all back down.
The last that we heard from DOT, they wouldn't give up their tracks, but they would entertain a walking trail along that. Yeah.
Well, at least it would be used that way, because to me, it's north of Town Hall. It's not being used. So at least if it was a walking trail.
So they won't give it what I understand, there's a gas line that runs underneath there. It goes up to Westover, like fuel.
But you could walk along that.
Jet fuel?
Underneath the tracks.
I believe it.
Or side of tracks.
Yeah.
But I think they can pump jet fuel and they can put, I'll call it plugs in and put heating oil up to Springfield. It's multi-fuel. Go through it.
I don't know why that. Just know we did a job a long time ago and was jumping on Park Hills. Long story. I'll tell you later.
So the infrastructure. I think we did the new approaches for commercial development. with the commercial development district. Did do that with the economic development commission.
Yeah. With what funding?
Bingo. And what is that?
Well, we had,
And I'm looking at the brown.
Yeah, so am I.
incentive policy.
What you gonna do?
So a policy can have information on tax abatement, or then we already have an ordinance on that, but what we were thinking was like a tax increment financing district. There's an area in town that we think needs some investment. The one that comes to mind is North Road. If we were to get water down North Road.
We have it.
That'd be wonderful.
One time we had it. The mansions were supposed to come right down
Oh, that's a shame.
before my time.
Yeah, that's a shame.
It's coming right
But
down the road.
that's the kind of thing where that to attract more development and take that incremental.
Water and gas.
Yeah,
Both.
once it's open, get it in there.
I guess the other thing that always, when I think of business in East Windsor, I think of the Route 5 corridor south of the high school. And how do we bring that back into something other than car dealer lots?
I know.
Yeah,
So there's been a couple houses getting knocked
Yeah.
down and sold over there, and I don't know what they're building there, but
I mean, you've got active things in flower,
You just got
power, and
You got Southern Auto Auction that's so big, that's why they're there.
yeah.
They're still coming.
they're slowing down though. They're not
Are
as
they?
busy. Yeah, they're not as busy. I don't think it's the once were 20 years ago or
No,
15 years ago.
That's true, because all those auxiliary lots.
They're all
they built
empty.
are empty.
They're all empty. And I hear they're putting, maybe 10 lanes instead of 20 going through the auction.
That's true. When I first got here and spoke with Larry Tribble.
They were full throttle.
No,
Oh,
they were
okay.
half, because I came
Yeah.
in, it was probably 21 that I talked
That was
about.
COVID still. That
Yeah.
was slowing it
Now
down.
you get all those flood damage cars coming.
Yeah, good price.
But it would just be nice to have more mix of things
Yes,
along there
it
than
would.
just
So that
hardcore
means
lots.
if they're slowing down, that means those lots will eventually come up for sale to allow people to expand businesses there. The car, it'll solve itself.
Yeah, we have such a saturation that they'll undercut each other to the point that only a few will.
So nobody will survive, exactly.
Have you had the opportunity to look at the doing business in East Windsor, the webpage that we made with all the useful information and
I looked at
to reach out to?
the land for sale side of it. I looked at. It was a little piece of it that showed potential land that was available for sale, but that's not been updated or maintained.
No, it
When I really
hasn't.
pulled at that thread, it unraveled quickly.
It's a
Yeah.
hard thing to maintain,
Yep.
very hard.
They'd have to have automatic links to the MLS or something like
Yeah,
that.
we just don't have that.
Time or resource.
Bandwidth, yeah.
Tax incentive. We do stay in touch with Advanced CT, which is that Metro Hartville. And we have taken them out on tours of developable property through town and like and zoning application fees. We've done that. The one thing that's still on our kind of to-do list is the legal notices. I think you brought that up. The legal notice fees. To have the applicants pay for that.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
expensive.
You guys, go through their towns and see what they're charging and kind of,
Yeah, when we go to do reg changes, we go all over. Yep.
for towns for fees, why? For fees,
Yeah, we
yeah.
can do that. Yeah, for,
Because like I pulled permits in all different towns and they're all over the place. The fee structure is just, every town's different.
Building officials looking to do some changes to his too, and I think he has the same.
Sometimes they're $20 per thousand, sometimes they charge flat rate, some towns are just throw all over the place.
What more flexibilities are needed in the sign regulations? Your second one down.
Second one down.
We have pretty liberal sign, content neutral, we're allowing LEDs, we're.
Just made me think of Wendy's. I meant to say something to Danielle about Wendy's.
4x8 piece of plywood we allow.
I mean,
It's a big lie at lunch day. Wendy's is good.
Big sign.
Horrible. Big flags. Yeah. Really, what we've done, like, we changed the definition of a sign, right, to be for commercial use, right? So other signs not for profit would fall off. You're not a sign. And then we have to change our regs so that we're content neutral, because we have some, if you're.
Oh, okay.
We just have to do that. If you're a campaign sign or whatever.
Yeah.
Just trying to make it.
Okay, I understand.
So,
On the village areas,
yeah.
when we got into that, event facility and, Scantic was a village and it was zoned business. I don't really see it as viable for business. I wonder if those few lots that are houses should be zoned business.
So each little village had a little, this is going back a long time, each little village had a little
Main
business.
center of town.
That was the main.
Center of
Oh,
commerce.
but then it shouldn't just be two houses.
So that's what they had, like
So-
each, the 5 boroughs had a little business area in each one. Obviously Broadbrook developed and Wells Point developed.
Oh, yeah.
And the others didn't.
The other
Melrose
ones didn't.
Yeah.
Bill has
This
a
now
little-
follows, is it current to the developmental plans and needs of the town?
Probably, yeah.
So probably not.
No.
But Windsorville at least has the septic business and the
Bakery.
Bakery, yeah.
restaurant, whatever it is. There's
Oh, those
something there.
technologies.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
They moved.
Oh,
Not they
okay.
moved because I saw their signs down.
But
going on the
but
building.
there used to be a mailing business there. I mean, there's been
Toner,
history of,
Copiers, yeah.
businesses
Used to
there.
be a
It doesn't-
supermarket there. There was mailing
So
business.
Centerology, didn't they go to the old bakery building?
Oh.
They moved out of there?
Their trucks are,
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
In that-
there's a big building on the left-hand side now.
They started off at Toner and then they
Yeah.
went to that building across. the
That blew up one time, a
Yep.
long time ago? Oh, okay.
I guess when I look at Windsorville, there's been a active recent history of some business, so I can see that as
But-
still a village.
It always
But
struggles
not
though.
Melrose.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see Melrose as a village
No.
and I don't see Scantic today as
No, probably not.
a village.
No, it's a loophole now.
It's good that you bring that up. Mike and I have talked about this.
I agree.
Where,
Are there really 5 villages anymore?
Well,
There's a historic district in Scantic that I see.
yeah, there's, I think, very different villages, and that's what Mike and I were talking about. Like, is there the rural village?
Well,
And
there's historic villages,
Right.
because Melrose has got the historic schoolhouse and the woman. who
I don't think
made-
anybody would, support eliminating villages.
Yeah, definitely not.
But I think
You're gonna get
the designation of businesses in all these villages may not be, in line with current,
Yeah,
Land use.
yeah.
mixed
correct.
villages being Broadbrook and Warehouse Point, and rural villages being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Melrose.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a history there, I get it.
Yeah,
And I don't want to take away the history, but I just don't see.
but like Gail's house,
zoning it business.
Gail's house is in M1.
Right,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to
doesn't.
me.
so,
not to single her out, but
no, but I'm just,
No.
does that require the
Owner,
agreement by the property owners because
probably.
otherwise they're grandfathered in. I
Yeah.
mean, we could change it, but they'd still be
Well, the
grandfathered in,
use
but
would be, yeah, if it's an existing.
yeah.
But we
eliminating
we didn't ask permission to put the warehouse points village, right?
No,
Right.
and it came in some cat ditch,
Yeah, okay.
Food for thought.
Yeah. Um, the implementation committee seemed really hard to.
Yeah.
We did it once.
It's like to think all those people are gonna, from every interesting town are gonna get together and implement a whole bunch of things. I don't think people have enough time to do it.
So we can't even man our commissions. This was an oldie.
Yeah, what is happening? It was contaminated
Are they done with the remediation?
and they
then,
were,
or?
gonna do something.
They're still sampling wells out there. I don't believe they took out all the buildings. So there's no buildings there now.
So what's the use of the future there?
I think they took the hot spots out because they had some like PCB contamination here and there, and they got that
away,
disposed and offsite. Whether or not they did the piece where they were going to consolidate the
Contamination.
they were gonna cap it in a.
They're gonna poly it and cap it.
Yeah.
But what's the reuse of the mill?
Nothing.
I mean, is this
Open space or?
Right now it is.
Is it gonna be considered a brownfield forever or?
It's being.
When it's capped,
So the remediation action plan was to bring it to industrial commercial standards, cleanup standards.
Okay.
So if someone wanted to come in and
put an industry there
for commercial use there.
20 years later.
I mean, it's beautiful property along the waterfront. I mean, talk about what kind of
nice back there.
scenic area you could create.
Yeah, no, it's like too bad it can't be.
There's your open space. There's your open space. Look at a trail down there.
But if it's been only cleaned to commercial industrial, is it safe for people to walk through there?
My sister lived there for a couple of years after.
Maybe for an hour a week,
What are you allowed to do?
Yeah.
I watched that place burn in 84, was it 84, 86, around there.
Yeah, no.
I watched that place thing go up.
Kids aren't supposed to play in
The big fire.
Fire departments did all right. Their wish list, right?
You ever the fire whistle?
That's on my wish list.
Oh, here's my,
New school campus.
they have, I met with the superintendent.
So there's talks about that going on. There's talks about
building a whole school.
we're sending a liaison from the building committee over to the Board of Education, and they're talking about a whole campus or adjoining schools or middle school to the Providence school. So there's grumblings going on.
Yeah.
And new school options, obviously, but that's the
And to be
$150 million project later.
responsive to all the comments at the facility.
Where do you put it?
Community survey.
They want, right next to you.
Yeah.
Next to you.
I love it. I am all for that. The Colgan property, is that all the land that?
Yeah, that was designated for that.
That's why the
Right there,
town
right
bought it
behind me?
all.
We're just short $150 million bucks a little.
They wrote a narrative.
Yeah. I'll throw you a few.
I'll be voting no. I don't want to spend that kind of money.
Right.
But they gotta start someplace.
Yeah,
Start
no.
with a plan.
Start with a
Yeah.
plan.
Park and Rec, they have the master plan. Park and Rec now. They're the greenest items that were pushed. And then here's the thing about the greenways. We're looking at open space, we're looking at Park and Rec. Yeah.
Use the land for that.
Yep.
It'd be nice, it'd be nice to rip up the railroad tracks and make it a walking trail.
Building up there would
That'd be nice. I agree.
all your town offices.
That was the plan when we voted to buy it.
I think Lynn feels like he's good with this. Like he has new specifications. As part of his sports. And we pulled forward the
Bike paths.
yeah, to go along with that same.
What about the
design.
sidewalks going around the park? Anything? The sidewalks that were
Oh.
wrap around
Yeah,
the whole
that's,
park and
I think
Park Hill and.
I think that's out to bid, or
Oh, is
the
it?
bid may have been approved. It went out to bid.
Yeah, it's got a,
Because this summer they were clearing the trees up by the community garden, and I asked if we had to move the flower bed,
Yeah,
and he said, stay back 25
It'd be nice.
feet
It's
from
like
the road.
it's supposed to
Because
go
the
all the
sidewalk
way
is
around.
Yeah, big loop.
It's going on the community garden side, and then it's crossing
Oh.
over to the other side of the road.
Oh, I thought it was gonna go by.
there's some steep areas.
Sometimes they gotta cross over because they got stuff in the way. They're walking on the sidewalk down the road and getting
Yeah,
there.
well,
Yeah, oh,
exactly
yeah.
there, everybody walking their dogs,
Oh,
they
yeah.
need a sidewalk, definitely need a sidewalk.
The farmers listening session. I think, felt we would move this, keep that.
Yep.
Farm to table programs for schools and businesses.
That's all of those things. I
Wait.
can send this to you electronically if you want to read through.
Yeah.
That's all right, I'll do that. See that one? Escape. Get a picture, right, escape. But I wanted to talk about, here it is. When we have our workshop
That's right, it's in December.
coming up.
That's a nice picture.
Oh, it's a nice pitch.
Ellen Tots took that picture,
Who?
the assessor.
Wow,
Tax
she's a
assessor.
good photographer. I love that.
Yeah, she sent it to me because I was telling her we were having a photo contest for the PXD.
Yeah, wins.
She sent it to me, and I'm like, I like it. So,
That guy Frank, whose last name starts with maybe a D, who owned Dairy Delight. He's an amazing
Yeah.
photographer. He's incredible.
so here's what I'm envisioning. We have the annex meeting room as our meeting place for the workshop. And we would start off with people sitting much like here and give an update to.
So you're talking about the voting room?
Yep,
Okay.
the big voting room. Give a general overview of where we're at and some pieces of the survey results and recognizing that people want to maintain the rural charm of our town and issues that had come up. So the topic areas, I think we could have breakout sessions. So I'm thinking 15-minute breakout sessions. People can rotate between either 3 or 4 breakout topics to tell us what their issues might be on the topic and what actions they could suggest. So
Then
that we
you need a
can-
moderator for each break.
table. Yeah, yeah. So the open space and agricultural I put together. But this is what I wanted to show you, like our open space acquisitions or gifts, however we got them, are coming right down this corridor.
But that was kind of intentional.
Right.
The Scantic River.
The Scantic
corridor.
River, yeah. So it's like the focus.
Done a lot to
to
make
do
that
No,
corridor.
it's good, it's nice.
Make yourself a nice walking trail along the
the river.
Scandic.
Yep.
Yep.
So, And then all this is the issue in our town is a good one. All this prime farm soil is hashed color. State important farm soil is the yellow. Here are all our defined farms from the last POC. This probably has to be updated, but
A lot of farms.
a lot of farms.
Yeah.
But they all say active farms, not grown in.
Actual farm.
Actual 490 status, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so those
So they're
are
registered, yeah.
Farm, yeah.
only the solid green,
Yeah,
of
so
course.
that I can get an update from Helen. But this would be another, like,
Yeah,
the open
that's
space
great.
in together.
That much has been preserved.
And then, this is just if I were talking at the table, just to introduce the topic for people to weigh in on. These were the threats we've heard, either through the survey or the farmers listening session, and then opportunities for us. So I'm hoping that we can get a lot more from folks who come to participate. Economic growth. What growth areas are, incentives that we already have. Some of the other things we could talk about would be like the tax increment financing, tax abatement. This is the North Road.
P3.
Yep, the B3 area. And then Warehouse Point, right, we just did. And then the Route 5 corridor, that's all planned commercial development district eligible, right? So there's nice opportunities to do
So the purple won't get developed until there's water and gas. That's the biggest.
Yeah, that's the biggest.
That's the biggest holdup. That they've been trying to develop that forever.
Yeah.
Wetlands.
Yeah, there's a lot of wetlands in there too.
Up there. Industrial was the gray. And down here we talked about. I think this chunk of it is now solar.
So why do we have a swath of residential in between the two industrial sections right there?
That right there,
Yeah.
that is that Prospect Hill Drive.
Yeah,
okay.
up the backside of the hill over there.
Yeah.
I know exactly.
And it's very, very developed.
If you don't live there, you don't go there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You cut through.
yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
But that's just
bet
very
there.
odd that it's laid out that way.
It is. And it's King First.
Bunch of little houses up there.
Yeah, exactly which.
Little tiny starter
Yeah.
homes, no basements.
Yeah, they are. A lot of friends of them.
Yeah, it's a well-maintained
There's a park
neighborhood.
back there and a bunch
Yeah.
of other stuff back there.
Yeah,
It's
there's a little park.
One little village.
Yeah, it's a little village.
Another village.
Undisturbed.
It's village.
Undisturbed.
Park Hill Village.
Prospect Hill Village.
Prospect Hill Village, yeah.
And they always say for taking kids trick or treating, that's the place to take them
Because there's
because
so many houses in the
Yeah,
Close by,
they're close
yeah.
by.
So, and then we have this is the West River. And then this is where I ended. I ran out of steam. Housing density. Not sure whether we'll need it or not. It's nice to see it. And this is the plan. So where we thought we would have the MFDD. This is existing MFDD.
So yeah, West River is, or is that what's right next to it?
Yeah, it is. It's
Huh.
it would have to have been in order to with the development. But those were, I picture like home board like this with larger versions of the map and the discussion points and then flip charts and people, talking with the group and taking their ideas and just splitting the paper in half and saying issues and actions, yeah, and just letting it go free form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
SWOT charts.
You can see.
Sure.
So that's December 10th. Mike will be there, I'll be there, Danielle. No, I'll be there. And manning, if you want to man a particular breakout. And it's really mostly for getting ideas and listening.
So December 10th is a normal planned meeting for us, so it's just gonna be
Right.
down there.
So what, yeah, my intention is, if it is agreeable to you, is to cancel the regular meeting and post a special meeting that's just the workshop.
It's fine. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Well, we have no correspondence, no business meeting, and no need for an executive session, so unless anybody else has anything else they'd like to discuss, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I'm gonna circle back on that. And subdivision for a second.
We
Yeah,
can't
we can't do
discuss
that.
it because we've,
Okay,
public hearing is,
We'll get in trouble.
yeah, we can't have a discussion outside the public hearing.
Okay.
Questions,
Communication.
jot your questions down, and when we,
that's why you're there and I'm here.
No, it's just we'll be sued by somebody.
anything else?
Everybody's like, oh, don't talk.
Here comes the lawyers.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. We have a motion in a second. Call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. 8:39.